Welcome back, students. This is color theory. We are going to start the Pixel project. So usually it's with a portrait. You can do someone you know. This is my son. Or you can do family pet, or it could be somebody famous. It's really up to you. I'm going to start by measuring. So what I'm doing here is ticking off each ½ inch on my ruler. So 12 inches. And I'm going to hit every ½ inch and every full inch. And if you saw what I did, I put the portrait down just to get a gauge for how big this is going to be. Make sure that it fits. So I did just a regular printout on a piece of paper. It's maybe a little bit larger than life size. So that's one direction. And then I'll turn the ruler and go in the other direction. This direction, I'm going to go 10 inches instead of 12. So my image is going to be 10 by 12. And I'm painting it a little bit bigger so that it's easier for you to see and I can actually get more detail as I get farther into this. Again, I'm marking off every ½ an inch. I could have flipped it the other way and done every centimeter. That also works. Either way is fine. So now that I have that, I'm going to speed this up and we're going to go through and get the other tick marks here. So go all the way down this side. And I'm just putting a little tick mark at each one of those lines, and then I'm going to connect the dots from side to side to make my grid. Again, this is 10 inches. I think by the time I get to the other end, I notice that I'm a little bit wide at the bottom, but that's not really going to matter for this. So we've got that all together. Now let's go through and start lining them up. So I just kind of picked the corner. And then I decided I wanted to do a diagonal, so I'm doing more of a diamond rather than vertical and horizontal. You definitely can go straight across from one side to the other, but I decided to do more of a diagonal. So I'm lining these up at the top, and then I'm keeping that same angle. They're about 5 or 6 tick marks away from each other. And then what I'll do with the other one is I'm going to turn it and go the opposite way. And you'll see that as we get going. So I'm doing some of these at full speed so you can kind of see how long it takes to kind of line it up, draw that line. I'm using a colored pencil. Those just tend to smear less than a graphite pencil. I would not recommend a graphite pencil at all. Color pencil is way better for this project if you're going to do any of this work. So now that we've got a couple of these drawn, let's speed this up and I'll put the other marks in for this direction. Here we go. And it gets done a lot quicker this way. Once you get the pattern, pretty simple, pretty straightforward. The one trick is if you're going to do a diagonal like this, you have to kind of eyeball the angle once you get past the bottom. So there's my last one. Now I'm kind of having to spend an extra second just making sure that that lines up as I go towards that corner. So now I've got that. I've got to move over to the top side, which I don't have yet. And again, I'm eyeballing that top angle now. It's about 2 tick marks, but it's not precise. And it's okay if you are not being super precise with how you're setting up your grid. The grid's there just as a way to try and give you something to paint in every time you go to paint. So here we go. We've slowed down, figuring out what's this angle that I want to do. So I'm going to go through and make a few of these. This is regular speed, or maybe 1.5. We just slightly sped up. All in all, this took me about 16, 17 minutes, maybe 20 to do everything to set this up. So it shouldn't have to take you too long if you know, if you've got your ruler, you've got your pencil, you've got your paper, and you've got your picture printed out, something to smear onto the back. So we'll speed this up one more time and finish off drawing out our grid. This is the exact same thing we did the other direction, but then this looks more like snakeskin or fish scales with the diamond shape rather than um, just your normal basic squares. You can do that. If you remember, also during class, I said you could go through and use that website, DIYart.com, and then you just upload a picture and it makes the grid for you. It puts the numbers in there. That's great. It's quick to get it set up, but you need to make sure it's not on copy paper. It needs to be on cardstock. And then the painting, they're going to be way more squares. This one I have way fewer and it's a little bit easier. So now it's time to transfer my photo over to the grid. So I'm shading the back of this photo. This is a charcoal medium pencil. You can use charcoal soft. I do not recommend using a hard charcoal. If I knew where I could find it, I would have used my vine charcoal instead of this. This is my second choice, and it's going to work. It did work. So then once I have that shaded, check to make sure I have everything that I need, and then I start to trace this. I could use a pen. I'm actually just using the colored pencil. That also works, and it shows me where I've drawn and where I have not drawn. There's a little bit of the back of the head that didn't make it onto this picture. Thought I took a better picture than I did, so I end up drawing the back side of the head up at the top. But when I go through and I'm tracing this, I'm tracing all the times that it changes from light into shadow. So the darker areas get traced out, the lighter areas get traced out, the highlight gets traced its own little shape. And you'll see that in the final image that I'll put in the folder. You want to get as many different zones of value that you can. So here's me going back and finding a couple more, and I end up forgetting the ear. So what I ended up doing here, I'm going to go through, now that I've used the charcoal to transfer it over, I'm redrawing this drawing with my colored pencil. The reason why is charcoal tends to smear and disappear really quick and can be kind of dirty. If I were to go through and use my eraser to clean this up, the pencil will stay, the charcoal will disappear. So I prefer to keep mine very clean. That way it makes it easier for me to make sure I can see the lines as long as I possibly can in the painting process. So I'm redrawing everything that I traced on the top. And as I go through and do all that, I can fix things if I made a mistake. There's going to be times where you can look at your photo, you can say, oh, that's not right. I need to change this. The main thing that I notice here is that I forgot the ear or the details inside the ear. You've got your helix and all the little bumps inside your ear, and I forgot those. So now I'm going to put the paper back down really quick and trace those one more time here. Once I've got those drawn out there, then I'll redraw them with my pencil. And we'll move over. That's me smearing off the charcoal, or at least a little bit. The one thing I'm going to do here is just quickly shade in the darker values. I just recommend this because it kind of helps you as you progress. If you ever get confused about where the light should go and where the shadow should go, if you add just a little bit of shading to the shadow areas, it's going to help you to make sure that you put the darker values when you mix them into those areas, and you can keep the lighter ones off into the lighter areas that don't have shading. So this is about it for the shading part. The last thing you're going to see and it's something that I recommend doing at the very end. So I'm going to take this ruler and I'm going to draw some lines in between. So before everything was about a 1/2 inch diamond mesh. Now I'm going in between that. So now it's like a 1/4 inch or maybe even finer. And I'm really only doing that on top of the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the ears. The detail areas, I'm going to give them a little bit more of a tighter grid so that there's smaller squares to paint in. And that helps me, especially at the beginning, to make sure that all that gets together and it has enough detail that it's not hard to understand what it is. So I'm almost done with that, and check the folder to see the final image. But thanks for coming, and we'll see you next time for the beginning of our painting.